Hello again, everyone. This is Nana Lynn, and we're going to do the 4th chapter in our book, The Missing Kitten. Are we all settled in and ready? If not, then please pause the video, go find out what you need to do, get your blanket, get your pillow, whatever it is you need to do. Maybe Mom told you to pick up your room before you settled in for the night and you haven't done that yet. Let's go do that. So I'll be here. I'll be waiting. Okay, Chapter 4, A Sneaky Follower. Again, there are the pictures of our kittens. Same kitten, little Ginger. All right, Boots, did you miss me? Suzanne picked him up and hugged him lovingly. Boots rubbed his head against her cheek. Dad had come to meet them from school, as it was the first day, but tomorrow they were going to walk there and back by themselves. Come and have a cookie, Dad suggested. Then you can both tell me what it was like, now that there's no one else around. When he'd asked Suzanne at the school gate how her day had gone, she just muttered, fine, but he could tell that she was only being polite. It was all right, Jackson shrugged, munching a cookie. Played football at lunch. The teacher was a little strict, shouted at people for talking, but it was fine. Dad looked over at Suzanne, who sighed. It was okay. This girl named Lizzie was told to show me around, and she was nice. She took me with her at recess and lunchtime, but, well, it was only because she had to. She might really like you, Dad pointed out. Suzanne ran one of Boots' huge ears between her fingers and sighed. Maybe. It wasn't as bad as it could have been, she admitted. The two girls she'd seen in the store hadn't said anything else about her weird name, which was what she'd been worrying about. They'd been at the same table as Izzy and her at lunch, and they'd been friendly and asked where she lived and if she took the bus to school. It turned out that lots of the students did. They came from several different towns, and a school bus went around and picked them all up. It's nice that we can walk to school, she said to Dad, who was still looking worried at her. Excuse me. Boots rubbed himself against her red sweater, leaving orange hairs all over it, and Suzanne petted him again. Whatever happened at school, at least she could come home and play with him. She couldn't imagine being without him now. I don't know if you have a pet or not, but I bet you feel the same way about your pet if you do. You're sure you wouldn't like me to come with you? Dad asked for about the 4th time. No, Jackson said. Honestly, Dad, we're fine. It takes about 10 minutes to get to school, and we don't even have to cross a road. Stop worrying. Boots was sitting on the bottom step of the stairs, watching disapprovingly as Suzanne and Jackson got ready. They were going again, just like yesterday. Why was he being left behind? He let out a tiny, furious meow, but Suzanne only kissed the top of his head and went out the door, leaving him with Dad. Dad picked Boots up and tickled his ears before rubbing the top of his head, and then he put him back down on the stairs and headed into the room where his computer was. He was going to be too busy to play again. Boots stalked into the kitchen and inspected his food bowl, which was empty. He had a little water and looked at his basket. He didn't really feel like sleeping. And if this were anything like yesterday, Suzanne and Jackson would be gone for hours. He didn't see why he couldn't go with them. Until yesterday, he'd been with Suzanne almost all the time. Boots walked over to the cat flap and sniffed at it carefully. They hadn't been gone long. Maybe if he was quick, he could follow them. Boots shot out of the cat flap and dashed into the backyard. Suzanne and Jackson had gone out the front door, so he hurried around the side of the house and on to the front yard. He nosed his way under the blue gate, flattening himself underneath the wooden panels, and coming out into the road next to the car. His whiskers twitched excitedly as he tried to figure out which way Suzanne had gone. He could follow her scent, he was sure. He sniffed busily at the grass and then set off running. Uh-oh. I think he's going to get in trouble. And there's our picture of him coming under the fence. Let's read on and find out. Suzanne and Jackson were halfway to school, walking down the sidewalk along the side of the big field, when suddenly she stopped. "Can you hear a meow?" Suzanne asked, and Jackson turned around to stare at her. "Don't be silly. Come on." "No, I can hear meowing. I really can. It's Boots, I'm sure." Suzanne peered along the sidewalk behind them and laughed. "It is. Look." Boots was running after them, meowing happily, and as Suzanne crouched down to say hello, he clambered up into her lap and sat there purring wearily. He'd had to run faster and further than ever before to catch up. "What's he doing here?" Jackson shook his head. "Yes, you're very clever, Boots," he admitted, running one hand down the little kitten's back. "But now we have to take you back home, and we're going to be late." "Do we have to take him back?" Suzanne asked sadly. Jackson rolled his eyes. "Yes, of course we do." "We can't take a cat to school, Suzanne." I suppose not. "And we have to run because we're going to be late." Suzanne swallowed anxiously. She didn't want to be late, to have to go in after everyone else and explain what had happened. They hurried back down the sidewalk and across the street before bursting through the front door. Dad came out of his office looking worried. "What's the matter? Why are you back? I knew I should have gone with you." "Don't worry, Dad. Everything's fine." Suzanne held out her arms, full of purring tabby kitten. "Boots just followed us. He caught up with us as we were going past the big field. We had to bring him back." She put Boots into Dad's arms, and he stopped purring and glared at her. He'd gone to find her and brought her back, and now she was going again. "Sorry, Boots. I'd much rather stay with you." Suzanne petted his head as she turned to leave. "Come on, Suzanne," Jackson yelled from the door. "You'd better run, sweetheart," Dad said. "I'd drive you, but driving would take longer than walking the shortcut. I'll call the school and explain why you'll be a little late." "Don't worry." "Thanks, Dad," said Suzanne. When Suzanne and Jackson hurried on to the playground, the principal, Miss Wilson, was standing at the main door watching for them. Suzanne was worried. Luckily, Miss Wilson didn't look angry. She just smiled at them as they raced toward her and patted Jackson's shoulder. "Don't worry. I used to have a dog that followed me to school. Still, I've never heard of a cat doing it. He must be very fond of you." Suzanne nodded proudly. She hadn't really thought of it like that. And there's the picture. "I explained to your teachers what happened, so just slip quietly into your classes, all right?" "Thanks, Miss Wilson." Suzanne crept mouse-like along the hallway. It was all very well to say slip in quietly, but everyone was going to turn around and stare at her. She eased the door open to her classroom, wincing as it creaked. But her teacher, Miss Mason, just smiled at her and waved her over to her table and went on pointing out something on the whiteboard. "I wondered where you were," Izzy whispered to her. "I thought you might not be coming back." "It wasn't that bad yesterday," Suzanne muttered. "Are you okay?" whispered Izzy. "Did you oversleep?" Suzanne shook her head. "No. It sounds really silly, but I had to take my kitten home. He followed us to school." "Your kitten did?" Izzy stared at her. "I didn't know you had a kitten." "I've got a cat. His name is Oscar, but he's never followed me anywhere. He's too lazy. What's your kitten's name?" "Boots." Suzanne smiled proudly. "We've only had him 2 weeks, and he isn't used to us leaving him. Mrs. Mason's giving us a look. I'll tell you more at recess, okay?" Izzy grinned. "You're so lucky to have a kitten." Suzanne nodded and stared at the whiteboard. Izzy was right, she realized. She really was lucky. And that is the end of Chapter 4. Tune in later and we'll read Chapter 5. And let's see, there are, I believe, 8 chapters in this book. Maybe not. But I think each one has 8 chapters. We'll find out. Yes, 8 chapters. So, we have a few more to read. We're about halfway. So I wonder what's going to happen. What do you think is going to happen with Boots? Do you think he's going to try to follow her again? I don't know. I guess we'll just have to read and see, won't we? Good night.